Reading comes from 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 18. For the word of the cross is folly to those who are perishing, but to us who are being saved, it is the power of God. The further along into the season of Lent we journey, and we draw closer to Holy Week and the Passion of the Christ, the longer the shadow of the cross becomes. In the final weeks of this Lenten season, the cross should be the focus of our spiritual practices and of our prayers. Let us then meditate on the cross as to what it was, to what it has become, and how it managed to bridge this great divide. I wish I could remember where I first read this meditation and spiritual practice so that I could share the original author with you, but I cannot. First, I want you to imagine two heavy timbers. And remember that the Romans, who did not invent the practice of crucifixion, but had made it perfect, would probably have brought the sturdiest of timbers from Europe, as I can't imagine such wood and such timbers would have been in Palestine. The crucifix, which was made perfect for what it was intended to do, was probably shaped in a capital T and not as a cross when assembled. As a wood would have been brought into the region, the cross would have been reused to save on resources. And so as you look at these timbers closer, you notice that they are scarred from previous crucifixions that were performed on this wood. And then you notice the blood that has stained the grain from all those deaths. As you gaze further upon the cross with its simple structure, you become overwhelmed by the fact that you are looking at one of the vilest inventions of man. It is an instrument of shame, humiliation, intimidation, but most of all, it is an instrument of death. As much as you are tempted to turn away so you don't look at this image, you need to look closer and realize what man had intended it to be. In the words of the Apostle Paul, the cross is folly to those who are perishing. And now look at the cross some 2,000 years later and see what it has evolved into. Made of precious metal and stone, it hangs around our necks and our wrists as fine jewelry. As sanded and polished wood, it is displayed in our homes and our places of worship as art. Carved out of stone, it stands in cemeteries as markers for our loved ones who have passed away. In ink, it adorns canvas and skin as visually stunning displays. It has become plastic decals that we place on our cars, magnets for our refrigerators, trinkets we hand out at fairs, or simple structures of wooden limbs that we place in our yards or in our parks or along the highways as we remember loved ones who have passed. And now I ask you to pause and meditate on how the cross got to what it was, an instrument of death, to what it has become. An instrument that man used to shame and humiliate has now become a symbol of pride and joy. What man used to intimidate man has now become a source of power and strength. An instrument of the cruelest death that man could have come up with has become life for those who believe. And I ask you, how is this possible? The Apostle Paul also wrote To those of us who are being saved, it is the power of God. As we continue to work our way through Lent and the long shadow of the cross, remember that it is God's power that brought you this far. And it is God's power that will see you all the way through. For only God's power can bring light from the darkness and life from death. So this morning we'll relight our first candle, the candle of manna. Our second candle, the candle of compassion. Our third candle, the candle of joy. And this morning we'll light the candle of the power of the cross. Let us do so as we stand, or as we sing our communion hymn.